Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first I would like to talk about the report of Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to him, during the previous few days, the Ukrainians managed to establish additional control over cities and villages on the Kursk direction, and as for the 14th of August, the Ukrainians captured around 74 settlements. I'll remind you that just 2 days ago, Syrskyi stated that Ukrainians were controlling just 28 settlements, and as you can see, during the previous 2 days, the Ukrainians shown significant progress on the ground. Now let's talk about this progress on the ground, and first we're going to talk about the western direction. During the previous 24-48 hours, the Russians conducted a series of counteroffensives in direction of Snagas, and basically the Russians managed to restore control over the city. But the Ukrainians, when they were forced to fall back from this area, decided to move further in the northwestern direction, and now the Ukrainians are trying to storm and to attack the village of Krasnooktyabrskaya. Furthermore, we can consider this Ukrainian maneuver as a purpose, as a, let's say, attempt to cut the Russians in the southern part from the city of Korenevo. Now the Russians suffer significant problems with logistics, not such a big, telling the truth, but some problems they have. And obviously, if the situation remains the same, the Russians sooner or later will be forced to fall back from Snagas to Apanasovka. So this is the situation on this flank. Now let's move further. According to information we have, the Russians were forced to fall back from the village of Olgovka towards Korenevo. The Ukrainians captured the village, but telling the truth, we've been receiving updates about Olgovka, about Ukraine control over the village for the previous 2 or 3 days. So most likely the Ukrainians captured the village a long time ago, but just now we have some changes according to different mappers. Most likely, the mappers made their updates according to this video. In this video that we have already discussed yesterday, we can see a series of FPV drone attacks of Babri FPV drone operators on Ukrainian positions. Once again, most likely according to this video, this change of Olgovka was made. As for the village of Korenevo, this territory is under complete Russian control, but now it's very difficult to understand for how long the Russians are able to control this territory, being completely encircled from many directions. So maybe the Russians would be forced to fall back with the purpose to maintain the line of combat contact and to reduce the risk of being encircled in the very near future. Otherwise, the Russians need to make additional attempts to counterattack the Ukrainians in the village of Zhuravli and the Ukrainians in the village of Olgovka. If the Russians are able to restore control over these 2 villages, then they don't need to fall back from the city of Korenevo. As for the breakthrough area between the cities and villages like Kauchuk, Alexeyevsk, Anastasievska, Levshenka, and Krymskie Byki, as you can see, during the previous night, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything regarding additional progress, no changes on the ground according to different mappers, no geolocations that can confirm additional progress. But according to some more or not so reliable sources, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions deep inside of the territory of Russian Federation, and according to the same sources, currently the edge Ukrainian positions of sabotage and reconnaissance group are located somewhere between the villages of Lyubomirovka, Большая Orlovka, Vyshnye Derevенki, Bezhencev, and Levshenka. And if we calculate the distance between possible Ukrainian positions further in the northern direction and the village of Lvov and the city of Lvov itself, or at least with the main supply road between Kursk itself and the Rylsk, the current distance is around less than 8.5 kilometers. So the Ukrainians are moving further in the northern direction without being afraid of being encircled by the Russians. So very rare situation. Now let's move to the central flank, to the central direction. The Ukrainian sources published the video of how they were bombing the Russian forces inside of the village by the name of Staraya Sorochna. This area used to be in contested zone, but now we have geolocation that confirms the Russian presence in the area, and we have adjusted the map back in Russian favor. So we have colored this territory back as the territory under complete Russian control. Now let's move further. We have reports that Ukrainians were forced to return back to redeploy the forces of 82nd Air Assault Brigade and the forces of 80th Air Assault Brigade with the purpose 80th Air Assault Brigade, so 82nd and 80th were removed back from the line of combat contact due to significant losses and due to the situation that these two brigades have already lost their combat capabilities as a result of clashes in Kursk area. These two brigades have been already let's say replaced by other battalions and other brigades, and the Ukrainians continue offensive. Now let's move further. Let's talk about let's say the northeastern flank of Sudzha Kursk direction. According to information we have and according to different mappers, the Ukrainians control the territory between this village of Malaya Loknya, Kosinca, Cherkasskaya Porechная, and so based on this report we have adjusted the map and added this territory as a contested. So nobody has doubts that the Russians control Russkaya Porechная. Now let's move to Sudzha area. According to different mappers, according to different military experts, mainly pro-Ukrainian and Western military experts, currently the Russians were completely forced to fall back from Sudzha and from the Sudzha agglomeration. So according to different military experts, currently the Ukrainians control Martinovka, Mykolaievka, the city of Mirny and city of Sudzha completely. So there are no more Russians inside of this agglomeration. So basically, according to this report, on the 14th of August, the battle for Sudzha has ended, and the Russians were forced to abandon their positions completely. So this is the situation. Very important statement, of course. We are waiting for additional reports from pro-Ukrainian sources and pro-Russian sources, and of course we are waiting for the reports with the flags or something like this. Once again, the Russians were forced to fall back, and currently the Russians are holding their defense on the line between Agronom and Kalmakov. This area between this red line and Sudzha agglomeration is in the gray zone. Now let's move to the southern flank of Kursk direction. We have adjusted the map. We have lots of changes on the ground, as you can see. And first of all, today we got some geolocations that confirm the Ukrainian breakthrough that took place yesterday. If you remember, yesterday the Ukrainians, as a result of fast lightning attack, managed to break through the Russian defense belt through the village of Plyokhovo, then to the village of Spalne, then to Kupets, then to the village of Kamishne, and then the Ukrainians answered Giri. The Ukrainians were using significant number of armored vehicles and personnel carriers. The Ukrainians were trying to dig in deeper, but as I understand, and according to the most of the military experts, the Ukrainians were ambushed in this area and they lost everything they had. Those who managed to survive, of course, left the territory towards more reliable positions to the west. The Russian sources published the video of how they were clearing and moving through the village, how they were driving across the main streets, how the Russians were showing episodes with the Russian flag in the vicinity of town hall. So based on this video, we can make 100% sure conclusion that the Russians restore control over Giri, and now the Ukrainians' edge positions are located somewhere in the village of Kamishnoye. We don't know for sure whether the Ukrainians control this part of the village or this part in the gray zone, but we have just one geolocation that was published by the Russian side. In this video we can see how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian forces inside of this village. And the most important, that this is not just like something like sabotage or reconnaissance group that was discovered by the Russians and then was attacked by artillery. We can see significant number of Ukrainian stormtroopers, Ukrainian forces that main purpose to dig in deeper, which confirms complete control over the village and that the Russians currently don't have chances to counterattack with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back. So this is the edge Ukrainian positions in this direction. Furthermore, we have additional video of how the Ukrainian soldiers were moving in the village of Plyokhovo. Now, as you can see, the Ukrainians are moving very slow. They're not very fast. They try to be, let's say, secure. They try to be on the safe side. And there is a very interesting moment while the Ukrainians were moving along the village of Plyokhovo. For example, in this episode, we can see a civilian, a man who decided not to leave the village and to stay there. He was sitting, say, in the vicinity of his own building and watching how the Ukrainians were moving. As you can see, the Ukrainians didn't attack him, so they just were moving further, also in their own direction. This video confirms complete control over Plechova itself. Now let's move further, and now let's talk about northern Kharkiv direction, because after on the 6th or 7th, on the 8th day of Ukrainian offensive operation in the Kursk direction, the Russians decided to increase their activity in Kharkiv area. The Ukrainian sources published the video how they were repelling Russian attack, and the Russians were using significant number of armored vehicles, personnel carriers, and the infantry. The Russians were trying to break through the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture the village of Gluboka completely, to secure the area around, to capture the northern area of Lyptsi. The Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russians all over the line of combat contact. Currently, we don't know for sure whether the Russians managed to improve their positions or not, but at least one geolocation was discovered exactly in this point of Russian attack. So, summarizing everything, we can make a conclusion that the Russians were attacking something like this, and the Russians were attacking something like this. And the main purpose was to get inside of Lyptsi itself and to improve their positions further in the southern direction. So, most likely today we're going to receive additional updates, but obviously this is very interesting. Currently, the Russians are trying to check and trying to understand whether the, let's say, the front lines are stable from the Ukrainian side, or they have problems due to their offensive operation in the Kursk area. Now let's move further. As for the territory between Volchansk until Pokrovsk, we haven't received anything, as well as nothing from Pokrovsk direction. Just few videos of how the Russians were FPV droning the Ukrainian forces who were moving on the same death road between Zhelanne and the Pokrovsk agglomeration itself. So nothing special, just a regular military activity. Very interesting updates are coming from the south Donetsk direction. During the previous night, during the previous days, the Russians conducted full-scale offensive operation with the purpose to cut the main supply road TO524 completely, to not just in few places, but to take under control the road completely, let's say 60% of the territory. We don't know for sure whether the Russian offensive finished with the success, with the progress, but anyway, we have adjusted the map, we have added additional blocks on the complete Russian control. At least in the southern part, the Russians were trying to capture the stronghold that located to the east of Vuhledar. The Ukrainians of 72nd Mechanized Brigade were repelling this attack. As you can see, once again, the Russians were using significant number of tanks, armored vehicles, personnel carriers, and infantry as well. So the Russians most likely were attacking this stronghold. Maybe the stronghold was captured by the Russians. The Russians were trying to attack, or made few attempts, first attempts to attack this stronghold on the intersection of the roads, but we don't know for sure whether the Russians were successful or not. And the Russians were trying to bring additional armor, additional tanks inside of Konstantinovka itself, and maybe the Russians were trying to capture the farms to the south of the village. So something big happened there during the previous few days, maybe let's say 24-48 hours, and most likely today we're going to receive additional changes on the ground and more geolocations that confirm Russian progress. As for Kherson and Zaporozhye direction, the Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians decided to reduce their defense possibilities in this direction in favor of Kupiansk area, and the Russians redeployed brigades and regiments from this area towards Kursk with the purpose to stabilize the situation completely. And that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.